I can feel her gaze from behind the fold. She reminds me of our contract and the benefits she is owed. My watchful protector and ever-present force. But now when she calls on me, all I want is divorce. The others say she is blind, but then why wear the fold? We all sit here in the tank and do as we are told. Like sheep in a herd, we all gather around. None of us have names, and we don't make a sound. We only have numbers and memories of the outside. The lives we used to live, we never said goodbye. And here we are all the same, and forced to see with one eye. In a blind world we are king, but I can't find where truth resides. She claims to bear witness, but won't assign blame. Her role has become symbolic. What a shame. All she does is bang the gavel and present us with a choice. Take an oath on all that is good, or renounce our own voice. This is no easy matter, because the oath carries weight. If I place my hand on the Bible, I will decide Mr. Brown's fate. 29 to life will certainly give you pause. This is responsibility that brings no applause. To place the life of another in our collective hands, to listen as liars take to the stand. On and on the story goes, pleas from the forsaken and tales of their woes. In this moment I realize that it is I who is cursed. It is Lady Justice who never has to do the worst. All she does is hold the scales and pretend that she is blind, waving her sword in pursuit of the divine. One by one we are chosen and removed from the tank, peppered with questions, and then given thanks. 2 weeks of service is what the contract entails. Some are deemed unworthy. They would tip the scales. Sent on their way, we look upon them with envy, not because they are free, but because their authority is not plenary. In the end, 12 of us are randomly assigned, but I am a lucky one and happy to be resigned. As I leave, I turn back one last time. I lock eyes with my peers who must sentence these crimes. In their gaze, I saw more than I wish to describe. They didn't have blindfolds to hide behind. Tehran is in tumult, and it's raining petroleum. I am your host, Negative Nick, and this is the No Good News Podcast. Welcome back, everybody. Recently, I had a pretty interesting experience in jury duty. So that is what that intro is about. You know, me and my relationship with Lady Justice. Very quickly into our arrangement, I wanted divorce, but she kept me around for 2 whole days just for jury selection. I'm happy it was that way, though, because the alternative is that I serve on the case. Not that I have a problem with being on the case in particular, but it's a pretty grave, it's a grave choice and a large responsibility to be in charge of a 29-year sentence for the defendant. So I'm happy that they let me go. A lot has happened. So I mean, we'll just start at the beginning. We had the Super Bowl. Now, usually I wouldn't discuss the Super Bowl, but I was told by our very loyal listeners that they really enjoyed my comments on last year's Super Bowl with Kendrick Lamar. So we're going to run it back and we're going to talk a little bit about this Super Bowl. I hate to say it, but this was not a good Super Bowl halftime show. Kendrick Lamar was way better. And the reason that this was not a good show is because as a creative myself, I like to judge art from a creative lens. And what I mean by that is Bad Bunny is a bad performer. He has no breath control. He can't dance at all. As a Latin, he's an embarrassment. All he does is gyrate his hips like a Latina whore, like a Puerto Rican whore in a club. That's all he knows how to do. He is mostly talking in his songs, and he doesn't even sing. The audio on his mic was all fucked up. Lady Gaga was flapping her hands, and her song didn't even go well with a Latin cover. The whole thing was a fucking shit show. His best song, DT, right? DTMF. We all know what the song is. His best song, he didn't even sing it. It was like 3 to 5 seconds at the very end of his show in a mosh pit. So this is why it was a bad halftime show, because the actual spectacle of it was no good. The stage presence was interesting. I liked how they had the people dressing up as pieces of grass to basically create a maze. And another subplot that no one's talking about this halftime show is that Bad Bunny legitimately thought he was going to be assassinated while performing, which is why he was in a maze and he was holding that football. If you go back and watch the performance, he's holding a football the entire time. And you're like, why is he holding the football that way? The football is like bulletproof, and he was holding it near his heart. In addition to that, he was wearing a bulletproof vest, which might have to do with why his breath control was so bad. And you can see it. You could like see the outline of it under the outfit he was wearing. So maybe the reason his dancing and breath control was poor was because he was wearing combat gear, trying to prevent a public assassination. I think that's a little overkill. I didn't think he needed to do that. But one thing is certain, it definitely diminished the performance. And I'm sure that many people don't even know this, but everything I just said is true. So that probably has to do with why. You can actually see there's one part of this performance where he climbs up an electrical pole meant to represent the frequent power outages that are in Puerto Rico. And when he's climbing this thing, you can tell that like he's moving weight because he's probably wearing a 20 to 30 pound bulletproof vest. So Kendrick Lamar's show was much better. Both had a lot to say about the American condition. Bad Bunny was talking about poverty in Puerto Rico, the chronic use of food stamps, EBT on the island. There's a lot of things that you could glean from the background and from the set, which I enjoyed. Kendrick Lamar, his performance, you could learn a lot about the American experience from both the lyrics and from the choreography and stage design. Whereas Bad Bunny, most of his social commentary was done through the stage design and less so through the lyrics. The show wasn't in. We have to mention it. He didn't even speak English. He speaks Spanish the whole time. That is sacrilege. You gotta speak English. And people are like, oh, well, he's an American. I agree, he's an American. But at a sporting event like the Super Bowl, you gotta be speaking English. I would settle for African American over Spanish. But we've had 2 shows in a row, 2 Super Bowl halftimes, where we're not speaking English. Next year, that has to change. For all I know, they might come out speaking Korean or Mandarin next year. The trend is not looking good. So we have to correct this before it becomes irreversible. I did really enjoy Charlie Puth's national anthem. That was incredible, and a lot of people miss that because it's right at the beginning of the game. The national anthem's quick. It's like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes or something. Do yourself a favor. Go on YouTube and watch Charlie Puth's national anthem. I think it's the best Super Bowl national anthem I've ever seen, except for Whitney Houston's. So this was really, really nice. Would highly recommend it. And speaking of Charlie Puth, he just released a new album a few days ago. He went head-to-head with Kanye, and he lost because no one can beat Kanye. But the album's real nice. There's a song in there called New Jersey, which is where Charlie Puth is from. Excellent song. Has lots of summer vibes. So I feel like the album is really going to have a resurgence when the pool gets opened in a few months. Really nice album. And we've had a lot of media, lots of great media come out since I've last seen you guys. We had the Charlie Puth album, the Kanye album, the Bruno Mars album. That is so good. That's fire. We have Invincible, an excellent animated TV show on Amazon Prime. And lastly, and perhaps the best piece of media to come out since the last episode, is a movie called Project Hail Mary. Producer, have you seen this? do yourself a favor, get your girl, go watch Project Hail Mary. It's a cinematic masterpiece. I rarely give a 10 out of a 10 to a movie. This movie is a 10 out of 10. So good, so optimistic. The visuals, the storyline, everything's perfect about the movie. The humor, it's so funny. Oh my God, it was great. For anyone in the audience, go out and watch this movie with Ryan Gosling, Project Hail Mary. And his acting chops are great because he's essentially, for I would say half the movie, he's the only human in his scene. He's basically acting with himself, and he does great. Loved it. Anyways, back to the Super Bowl. I was concerned with the Super Bowl. The Patriots QB, this guy was terrible. They're down 12-0 in the third quarter. A low-scoring Super Bowl where the majority of the points come from field goals. It was really just a snooze fest to watch. This guy can't get any points on the board. I kept saying to my family they had to take this kid out and they had to put in Tom Brady. But, because Tom could easily get 2 touchdowns and bring this game back. But this new guy, May, was unwilling to give up the spotlight, and they just kept Tom on the bench. It made no sense. I was really upset by that. I've seen what Tom can do. And, I guess it was really good of him to put his ego aside and let the new guy have a turn. But at some point, when you're down 12-0 in the third quarter, you gotta bring him in. Belichick was asleep at the wheel on this. The running back for the Seahawks, he is a bull. This guy's a bull. He won Player of the Game or MVP. I don't know what exactly they call it. He's like Marshawn Lynch without the criminal element. It was awesome. Makes him more palatable to my sensibilities. I actually went online and I voted for the guy, so I'm happy that he won. First time I've ever voted for a black man. Felt good. And, I guess now the only thing left to talk about is the advertisements. And we've talked about the game. We've talked about the halftime show, so now we talk about the ads. You can really get a sense of where the American economy is every year when you look at the Super Bowl halftime ads. We have basically every ad fell into a few distinct categories. The first type of category I'm going to call the humanization of AI. And it really shows that the public, the American public, does not like AI, that they are afraid of it, and that billions of dollars are being spent to convince people to adopt AI. They had this ad with Ring. We all know these door cameras, the Ring door camera. There was a Ring ad. I don't know if you guys remember it or if you even saw it. But they're going to add AI tracking into the Ring doorbell cameras. In the advertisement, in the commercial, they say that it'll help you find your dog when your dog gets lost. It was so stupid. I'm sitting here watching TV. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's going to be 24/7 tracking and linking up with other Ring cameras in the area to see your location, your pet's location, tracking moving items and connecting with all the other Rings in the area. That is a huge violation of personal boundaries, security. There's so many different. It's a violation of information. It's the weaponization of your information against you. Now you're saying, well, how are they going to do this? How are they going to implement this technology? Well, it's because they are going to partner with a very powerful American company called Flock. Producer, have you heard of Flock? No? I don't think I could hear you. Sorry. No? Okay. So Flock is a company that their main business model is they install cameras on highways. And these cameras track your license plate everywhere you go into a huge database. I want to be very clear that this company has cameras all over the United States. And they use this information to, number one, help authorities solve crimes, which is like the best argument you could make for this company, but they also sell your private information. And they tell organizations where you are and where you live. And once again, they do all this through your license plate. Well, Flock was going to partner with Ring. and implement this tracking technology into the doorbells. Within just 3 days of the Super Bowl airing, there was so much public backlash at Ring that Ring canceled their partnership with Flock. Rare dub for the American public. Rare dub. According to Ring, they said the project would, quote, take more time and resources than expected. Obviously, that's bullshit. You don't spend tons and tons of money on a Super Bowl ad if you haven't done the funding for the project in the background. But that's fine. I'm okay with their lies. That's okay. They ended the project. We'll take it. That's a win. Since the Super Bowl, Flock has gone on a PR campaign across the entire country, airing themselves on local news stations, trying to convince citizens that they are a security company and that the implementation of Flock into their city is for the net good of their area. But here's the thing. I do not like the idea of being tracked everywhere I go. And I feel like part of the social contract in the United States is that we accept crime in exchange for our privacy. That's kind of the built-in social contract of our country. So let's keep it that way. There were pretty much, besides humanizing AI, basically every other ad fell into 3 categories: crypto, gambling and sports betting, or GLP-1s to lose weight. Like, I saw something, I don't remember exactly, but it was like 80% of all ads were those categories: crypto, sports gambling or betting, whatever you want to call it, GLP-1s, and AI. There was also always a few car commercials and some alcohol commercials like Budweiser or whatever. But those 4 categories were a huge preponderance of the advertisements. So, I mean, the ads were kind of gloomy because these were supposed to be the most burgeoning, booming parts of our economy, and none of them are good. I mean, GLP-1s, you could say, are good, I guess, because people are losing weight, but these things have very deleterious health effects that no one's even really talking about. Losing your teeth, vitamin deficiencies, so many problems, mental health issues. It basically turns off the dopamine receptors in your brain. Because yes, when you eat food, that triggers dopamine, but other core functions of life are also associated with that. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Super Bowl. I hope you guys enjoyed. And now we're going to talk about the most surefire way to make negative Nick positive. And that is to put me in a room with Nigerians to conduct business. These people are great, and they are moving to the Charlotte area in ever-increasing numbers. These Nigerians are excellent. They live in gated communities with huge houses, and they love nothing more than to hire me as their child's tutor. It is the best. About 2 to 3 years ago, I got a random connection to join. I feel like I'm a spy. I feel like I'm a Mossad agent. Like I've infiltrated the Nigerians of Charlotte because they all know each other. They're like Jews. Like they all know each other. I got a contact with one of them, and I started tutoring one about 2 to 3 years ago. Ever since then, I have received over 20 new Nigerian students, and they all know each other. The parents will reach out to me. Hey, I know this person, and their names are always so funny. Usually 1 or 2 syllables: Obi, Ame, Amara. Always, they're beautiful names, 1 syllable, easy to pronounce. They are Christian, which is excellent, because Nigeria is a Muslim nation that the United States is actually currently bombing. I don't know if you've been paying attention to that because we're currently waging war on every continent. But, I'm sure there's something we're doing in the Arctic as well. But we are bombing Nigeria at this moment, and Christians are persecuted in Nigeria, which is our government's justification for getting involved, which is ridiculous, but whatever. So the Christians seek refuge, and they come here to the United States, and they're excellent. They're doctors, they're lawyers. I don't know if this is fully true, but if I'm not right, I'm pretty close. Nigerians might be the most educated minority per capita in the United States. Yeah, we could check that out. Thank you, Professor. Or Producer, excuse me. I always call you Professor. Happens sometimes. I'm getting old. Again, I'm like Trump. I'm making shit up. No, so I like to conduct business with these Nigerians, and when I finish tutoring, I like to just leave my car in their driveway and go for a walk. There's something really empowering about going for a walk inside of a gated community full of mansions. I don't even want a big house. I truly don't want one. It's too much work, and I don't want to put that on myself or a spouse or hiring a cleaning lady. But it's nice to just be around it, you know? I don't really want to own it. It's like a dog. Like if you want to hang out with a dog, like you just find a friend who has one, but you don't necessarily need one yourself. That's how I feel about these big houses, and I like to walk around the neighborhoods. So yeah, I mean, I've been the tutoring thing is going well for me, and we should definitely bring in some more Nigerians. We got to advocate for that in our local communities. So the producers got some information for us here, and we have a quick excerpt here that Nigerian immigrants have some of, if not the highest rates of master's and PhD degrees among minorities in the United States. Over 60% of Nigerian adults hold at least a bachelor's degree. Some of the highest percentages. There you go. So perfect. I mean, that kind of exemplifies the point. And that's another thing. They always got money, so I know they can pay. Perfect. I don't have to chase them. I did a little bit of traveling, which we'll hit on kind of quickly, and this will tie into the future segments and theme of this episode. I went to Texas. This is now the second year I've gone to Texas in the February-March season. And this time I had three major stops in the state of Texas. The first was I went to Wichita Falls. Have you heard of Wichita Falls, producer? Professor again. Oh my gosh. I know. I just had breakfast with my professor. That's why he's in my mind. Producer, have you heard of Wichita Falls?
No.
You have not? Wichita Falls is a medium-sized city in northern Texas, north of Dallas, on the border of Oklahoma. And it is here in this city of Wichita Falls that we have a Air Force base called NJEPT, European NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training. It's like Top Gun, that's for the Navy, but it's like Top Gun for the Air Force. Best pilots on Earth, not only in the United States, but on Earth, train at NJEPT. We bring Romanians, Italians, all these people from Europe, all these NATO countries. They ship their best guys over, and we teach them to fly jets and bombers. Incredible. I've got a very close friend who goes to this Air Force base, one of a kind guy, and he is going to be a pilot. So he's in pilot training, undergraduate pilot training right now, actually. And I'm telling you, producer, these guys are peak human specimens. I've never seen anything like it. It's incredible. They're young guys. They're like our age. And women as well, but most of them are guys. And I think it's something in the water. I mean, these people are jacked to the gills. All they do is eat ground beef, chicken, and, pump iron. That's it. That's like their full-time job. And that's kind of cool. You just get paid to get strong. And then, we make them into elite fighters to serve our nation. And when I was in Wichita Falls, the State of the Union happened. President Trump comes out and gives, it may have been the longest State of the Union in American history, but I know it was top 10, which is already crazy. At the State of the Union, Trump brings out a Delta Force pilot who was piloting the helicopter in the Maduro raid when we went into Venezuela and jacked Maduro. They gave this guy the Medal of Honor. He got shrapnel on his legs, but he looked very stoic. The way this guy looks, if you go back and watch the State of the Union, that's how these guys look at NJEPT. It's unreal. I mean, this Delta Force dude who is so jacked that the buttons were going to pop off of his jacket. So I had a great time in Wichita Falls, met some good people, and really enjoyed myself. And my friend who I was staying with, I used to visit him in Tennessee. We went to college together. I'd visit him in Tennessee. And in Tennessee, I met his family. And he's the only brother, but he's got multiple sisters. Something like, he might even have 9 or 10 sisters. I don't even know. There's too many to count. And in previous episodes, producer, we've discussed the pursuit of whiteness in previous episodes. And I have discovered a new level of whiteness. So my friend has got a sister, and she's a debutante. Have you heard of this before?
No.
A debutante, this is great. This is one of my favorite things, guys. I want my daughter to be a debutante. So a debutante is a young woman of high social status. She comes from money. And the way this thing works is when she turns approximately 16 or 17, you have a huge party. It's like a wedding. She invites her other wealthy friends, and then men of the township, they show up to court the debutante to try to gain her hand in dating or marriage. This shit is fascinating to me. This is the whitest shit I've ever heard of. She's a debutante. That's the word. You guys got to look into this. It's called the Debutante Ball. Incredible stuff here. Incredible stuff. My friend is showing me photos of the debutante. Such a fascinating concept. And is it like kind of old-timey? Yes. But it's got some real merit and benefit. I mean, it basically self-selects to keep wealth inside a few select families in the community. And I'm sure that you know what? It probably still happens today. This is the first time I'd ever heard of it. It was like gleaning into a new universe. I would love to be invited to one day. I wouldn't even talk. I would just sit in the corner. I just want to watch. It'd be incredible. I mean, the parents show up. Everybody's there. The whole town shows up to celebrate the coming of age of a high-class woman. So, yeah, that's a new level of whiteness, the debutante ball. And after Wichita Falls, I go to Dallas. And Dallas is... Actually, no, should I discuss? No, not yet. Let's keep it succinct. So in Dallas, I'm there for about 24 hours. That's all. Visiting a dear friend of mine who I've known since I was very young. One of my oldest friends. Older than you, actually. And he is in chiropractic school in Dallas, Texas. And I haven't seen him in over a year because he's out there, right? And I show up. He's so excited to see me. I walk in. He lives in a house with two other guys. So all three of them are chiropractic doctoral students. I walk in. He's got a black adjustment bed. It was like Jeffrey Epstein's house. Right there, once you walk in, he's got it right there. It's the first thing you see. I didn't even take off my shoes yet. My friend says, please lay down. And he starts touching me and adjusting me. I've never received an adjustment. I've never received the chiropractic adjustment. And my friend is, quite strong. All these young guys these days, when they're not making money, so they're getting strong, and I think that's awesome. I mean, that's absolutely. If you're not making money, you should absolutely get strong, or do both, but at least do one. So it's my friend and another guy. So there's two of them. The third one was, I don't know where he was, but there's two guys. They're both huge. Okay, one of them alone is probably double my body weight. Okay, unbelievable. I think they might be on steroids, but I was afraid to ask. Anyways, they get me on this table. They're folding me. They're moving me all around. I'm just laying on my back, and I'm looking up at these two hulks of men. And they're fucking... I mean, they literally could have broken my arm right there. They're wrapping me up like a pretzel, popping me, cracking me, all sorts of shit. It was insane. I have never received an adjustment before. And I was kind of uncomfortable. I've never been touched in that way before. It was very weird. But my friend gave me a nice adjustment on my neck. And now I've got more flexibility. And I know you're listening, and I want you to know you did great. Whatever you did, it still works. I used to have no range of motion in my neck as a result of a car accident I had a few years back. I wasn't able to take my chin and touch it to my left collarbone. I wasn't able to have that range of motion. But ever since he did the cracking, the popping, and the contorting, my neck is all fixed now. It was great. So I really appreciate it. It was a totally free session. It was awesome. Just laid me down once I walked in. It was awesome. So I had a nice time with him. And then I go to the Mecca of this great nation, Houston, Texas. This is where the true economic might and empire of the United States comes from. If you want to pinpoint what city is the American empire, it's Houston, Texas. There's all this talk about LA being entertainment. No, entertainment is not a core function of an economy. It's a tertiary. It needs to have things under it. You need people that are already wealthy enough to consume this entertainment. New York City, people will point to that. Well, that's all about finance and banking. Once again, you need people under that are wealthy enough to access said system. The wealth of our great nation comes from Houston, Texas. And that is where the oil goes. And that's where all the smokestacks are. My favorite part about Houston is that the air is polluted and gray. It reminds me of India, but it also reminds me of the great wealth that this nation has. So I go to Houston for almost 2 weeks to visit another one of my dear friends. I've got 3 dear friends that have left me and gone to Texas. And I hope that one day they come back. But for now, we'll have to settle for me driving to see them. I stayed with him for what was essentially 2 weeks. He's got a house now. He's doing great. He's got a girl. He's got a house. Excellent. They've got a dog. The whole thing, the whole shebang. They're knocking down walls, putting in, they're putting in sliding doors to the. They got a backyard. They got a picket fence. And they're doing excellent. It's a very nice house. Really enjoyed it. They live in a community where every single home, and let's ballpark it, it's 2,000 houses. That's a ballpark. Might be a little less, might be a little more. Every house is a rental. And he discovered, while I was there, he discovered that he is one of 3 homeowners in the entire complex of approximately 1,000 to 2,000 homes. And that is because they're all owned by a massive conglomerate and they're rented out. This is the BlackRock issue that we read about in the news. And he's unsure of how he was able to acquire such a property for ownership, but the rest of them are permanent rentals. So, I say this as more of a broader issue in the United States, but the house is great and I'm really happy for him. It's a very, very nice place. I think the bedroom I was staying in this I'm gonna call it a castle. It's huge. The bedroom I was staying in this castle, I think it's legitimately bigger than the bedroom I live in when I'm in Charlotte. Now that I think about it, it's very, very good size. They had me on a very luxurious. I found out it was an air mattress, but I didn't even realize that until I was leaving and stripping the bedding, because I wanted to be a good guest. I want to strip the bed before I leave. I'm like, wait a minute, it's an air mattress. I didn't even figure it out until I was like leaving. It stayed inflated for my entire 2-week stay. Luxurious. I'm telling you, man, he's doing great out there. He's doing excellent. I mean, he set me up real nice. So we had a good time out there. And while I'm in Texas, war in the Middle East breaks out once again. And obviously, we'll be talking more about this later in the episode, in the international segment. But I want to talk for a moment about how annoyed I am with President Donald J. Trump. And he's inhibiting my ability to travel. As I drove to Texas, gas was approximately $2.40 a gallon. And on the way home, it was $3.75. I felt that shit. I felt that. I mean, I was like, you know what? I got to stay in budget. I skipped a meal. As I was driving. I was like, this is in this economy, this is bullshit. This is absolutely bullshit. When the economy is already falling apart in every possible way, and now energy prices are going up, we're in serious, serious trouble. I remember as I was driving home and I saw the gas price, it was $3.75. And then actually, you know what? In some parts of, I think Louisiana it was $3.99. So we're kissing $4 a gallon there, right? Insane. I started to reminisce, because I have a lot of alone time as I do these. I mean, it's a 22-hour drive, so I have a lot of alone time to ponder and think and do research for these episodes. And I remembered during COVID, when gas was just $1.50 a gallon. You remember those days, producer? Mm-hmm. Those were nice days, weren't they? I remember those days. During those days, I was driving back and forth to Myrtle Beach multiple times a week with nothing but a smile on my face. It would bring me such joy to be filled up like that again, but those days are over. I mean, we are never going to get back to $1.50 per gallon gasoline. It's just not going to happen. So I don't know. I mean, it just got me thinking because when Trump ran for office, he promised lower gas prices, lower inflation. I mean, I think this just seals the deal that literally every promise he made has not come to fruition. Even the deportations, which is not even something I support. And he was going crazy, and we've had segments about ICE before. Obama and Biden have apparently deported more people than Trump. And that's with all this crazy ICE stuff. So, I mean, what's going on? Like, just the government is so incompetent. We're going to close out this personal update segment with two news stories that I've come across. So here's the first one. I'm going to try to read this like I'm a journalist. So here we go. A man in Charles County, Maryland, was found dead at approximately midnight on March 24th. He spent the night with his 3 friends, 2 of which exited the car owned by the 4th earlier in the night. So, 4 friends, 2 leave the car, 2 remain. The victim and his friend were last seen together at 10:30 p.m. by the 2 friends who exited the car. The victim was later found dead by gunshot wound to the head. The prime suspect is the friend who drove away with him, of course. There is just one small wrinkle. I can't read it. The prime suspect and driver of the car is one Dayton Weber, a quadruple amputee with no arms or legs. Dayton is an Olympic-level cornhole player who is known for his logic-defying feats, but he is innocent until proven guilty. For a case this exotic, we need to fly in America's best detective. We got to fly our best detective from San Francisco out to Maryland. Charles County needs Adrian Monk. Adrian Monk is a great detective. Have you heard of Adrian Monk? No. Best detective in the United States. You got to look this guy up. He's got some incredible cases that he's solved out there in San Francisco. He's got a few personality defects, but I mean, he's definitely worth a research. We need to bring in Adrian Monk on this case. Because how could a person with no arms and no legs shoot somebody with a gun? How's that even possible? But this is the prime suspect. So it's just incredible. One more little news story for you guys. Ori Solomon, O-R-I, his name is Ori. Ori Solomon has now been caught in his second biolab sting. The first of which was in LA, and the second is now in Las Vegas. A cleaning lady that Ori hired to come to the domicile spoke to police after becoming, quote, violently ill after visiting the property for a brief period. The first initial police investigation into the property also led to the police who entered the home getting sick as well and being admitted into emergency care. Detectives found vials of Ebola, COVID, HIV, malaria, and much more inside the home. Many guns were also seized in the raid, all of which were owned illegally by Ori Solomon. Turns out that Ori is an Israeli citizen who was released on bond, but he had to surrender his passports. He is here on a visa. The homeowner, because Ori was renting out the property, the homeowner is a Chinese national who is already in jail for owning the first sting house in LA. Ori manages over 30 properties on behalf of this Chinese national. What the fuck is going on? There is so much here. Like, this is definitely the tip of the iceberg. But what we know for a fact is there's a Chinese guy who's already in jail. He owns 30 houses throughout the United States. And this guy, Ori, was just busted in the second biolab sting on these properties. Vials of Ebola, HIV, and malaria. What is going on? Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. So I had to bring you guys those two news stories. Now we'll move on to our first advertisement for the day. We've got some very eager advertisers as the podcast becomes more popular. So let's take a quick break and talk about our first advertiser. Are you looking for a mortgage but having trouble getting your foot into the door of this unaffordable housing market? At Fannie Mae, we pride ourselves on turning these high interest rates and stubborn sellers into nothing more than an afterthought. Our FHA loans are the most relaxed on the market, with a tried and true history dating back to 2008. We tailor our mortgages to first-time homebuyers looking to put down as little as 3.5%. In an effort to reach out to a younger clientele, Fannie Mae is excited to announce that we are now accepting Bitcoin as down payment collateral on all new loans we issue. Use Bitcoin and blockchain technology to unlock the gift of home ownership. So call up your lender today and tell them that Fannie Mae found a way. Welcome back from the ad break. Thank you, Fannie Mae, for supporting our podcast in the same way that you support and uphold the entire mortgage market in the United States. Our producer did a little bit of research during the ad break, and he did in fact confirm that this was the longest State of the Union. And another fun fact, last year's State of the Union in 2025, also given by Trump, was the second longest State of the Union. So back-to-back winning. That's what we like to see. But let's see if next year we can pump those numbers up even further. We're now going to turn our minds to domestic policy. And I want to first ask the audience a question. Do you miss Uncle Joe? Do you miss him yet? I miss Uncle Joe. Joe Biden was the president we needed, but not the one we deserved. And that is never more apparent than now, than at these times. Let's talk a little bit about the regime's current staff and cabinet. We'll start with Pam Bondi, with just how is she not in jail? How is Pam Bondi not in jail? She was ordered to turn over 6 million documents related to the Epstein case, but she only turned over 3 million by the deadline. Furthermore, these 3 million were illegally redacted to protect criminals and reveal victims. Asked under oath if, quote, Trump was at any party with Epstein with underage girls, Bondi responded, remember she's under oath, Bondi responds that there is no evidence and is clearly panicked. So under oath, she says there's no evidence that could even lead to such a conclusion, that Trump was at a party with underage girls. Okay. Well, moments later, the congressperson shows the Dallas cab driver statement that I've discussed on previous episodes. And in this statement, it says that Trump was at the party abusing a girl. And in that moment, Bondi is caught lying under oath in real time, because this is evidence that she has and that she handed over as part of the file release. Turns out that the victim told the driver herself. So in a previous episode, I said that the driver heard Trump on the phone. That was actually incorrect. Turns out the victim told the driver herself, which makes it even more conclusive. This is kind of new information because the file was redacted, but then they made it less redacted. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyways, turns out that the victim was later found dead with her entire head blown off in the desert. So that's something to think about. Bondi then says that the senator does not want to talk about the, quote, rampant crime in his state. No, this is a hearing about your handling of the Epstein situation, not the rampant crime in this random senator's state. Kash Patel said that Trump was named under 100 times, but we now know that he is named over 1 million times. Oh my goodness. It's unbelievable. In a separate question, Pam Bondi responds with fear because she knows that she's been caught. And in the next administration, they should throw all these people in jail. I mean, they literally have her right now committing perjury. So when she's gone, they should throw her. When I say she's gone, when the Democrats take over, they should throw Pam Bondi in jail. Currently, that can't happen because Pam Bondi is the Attorney General for the United States. So why would she arrest herself? But in another line of questioning, she responds with fear, gets caught, and rather than answering the question, She says that the Dow Jones is over 50,000 and that the S&P is at 7,000. So rather than answering the question, she just says how good the stock market is doing. Crazy. In another quote, she said, quote, "If we prosecute everyone in the Epstein files, the whole system will collapse." That's a direct quote from Pam Bondi. Insane quote. So just to kind of wrap up, this segment, let's just give a succinct timeline because I know we've discussed it a lot. And this succinct timeline is actually a direct quote by a senator that he gave in the hearing. This is a quote from the senator. 12 months ago, you said that the list was on the desk, you referring to Pam Bondi. So 12 months ago, you said the list was on your desk. You gave it to Republican online influencers who quickly realized it was heavily redacted and contained no new information. You then said that there was no Epstein client list and that the files don't exist. Trump insults his own base for demanding their release and says that the entire Epstein case is a hoax. The Rules Committee Republicans voted against bringing the petition to the floor to release the files. Speaker Johnson sends Congress home early to prevent a vote and stalled the swearing in of a new member that would swing the decision. Ghislaine Maxwell is then transferred to a minimum security prison and negotiates directly with the assistant DA. Then, after the break, Massey has a discharge petition. Trump says it's a hostile act and threatens Republicans individually in the Situation Room and tells them not to sign off, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, which leads her to leave office. He threatens them with both primary and, I read the quote wrong. He both threatens them with primary opposition and bribes them with state spending. The resolution passes, the discharge petition. The resolution passes anyway, but your department, the DOJ, does not release the files. Only with immense pressure and with every House member except one and every senator's vote did you finally relent. Kash Patel then lies under oath, saying there is no evidence in the files that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone besides himself. Maxwell now says that in exchange for clemency, she will tell all. The Clintons did not even show up for their hearing today. So that's a great quote given by the senator that gives you a timeline of this whole thing. It's very obvious from this quote that there's a massive cover-up underway and that the administration can't get their story straight. We learned that from the files, the 3 million that got released, the FBI purposefully, we know this for a fact now, the FBI purposefully wiped the CCTV footage of Epstein's death within his cell. They purposefully wiped it, which means they are complicit in the cover-up. Epstein died on the morning of August 10th, 2019. But there is not one, but two releases in the files where the FBI drafts up a press release about Jeffrey Epstein's death, and these press releases were drafted and state the date of death as August the 9th. And they are drafted before he died. So if they were drafting a release about Jeffrey Epstein's death to release to the public, they drafted these documents before he died, and on the drafts, the date of death is August 9th, but then he died on August 10th. Seems pretty freaking obvious to me that the FBI either killed or knew he was going to be killed, which also explains why we now know that they wiped the footage. This is another amazing quote from an FBI informant inside the Epstein files. This is a direct quote, this entire thing. Epstein is represented by Alan Dershowitz. Producer, do you know who Alan Dershowitz is?
No.
Alan Dershowitz is I'm going to use the word notorious lawyer in the United States, and he's known for defending some of the most guilty people in this country's history. He's got tons of cases. So Epstein is represented by Alan Dershowitz. Dershowitz told Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. Attorney of South Florida at the time, that, quote, Epstein belonged to both U.S. and Allied intelligence services. I'm going to continue the quote. While in jail, Epstein would call Dershowitz, his lawyer, who would then relay information to Mossad. Epstein was close to former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, and trained as a spy under him. Barak believed that Netanyahu was a criminal. Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the UAE were allies against Qatar, Turkey, Iran, and Syria. What a fucking incredible excerpt and direct quote from an FBI informant. I mean, there is so much information in that. That is crazy. So, yeah, that is Epstein. We're not going to talk too much about it because we spent a huge amount of time on it last episode, but I wanted to just do a few more touch-ups on it. And let's see. I mean, the Olympics happened. The Olympics were great. I mean, Alyssa Liu performed stateside. Awesome performance. Love the performance. I'd never heard the song, but I threw that thing on for days afterwards on repeat. It was so good. I enjoyed the bobsledding. I enjoyed the curling. They've got this new sport where they have you run up a mountain wearing skis. Crazy shit. I mean, that it sounds absurd, right? But it's actually a very impressive feat. They have you running up a mountain in skis. But I don't know, some tall guy from, I think, Norway took the gold on that one. Kind of a made-up sport, but I enjoyed watching it. It was kind of funny to see. More domestic news on AI. Anthropic licensed its AI, Claude. I now use Claude. I think it's great. It's much better than ChatGPT. So Anthropic licensed Claude to Palantir. Yikes. And it was used in the Maduro raid to do target acquisition and prioritization. Pete Hegseth is now demanding that Anthropic gives its AI to the Department of Defense. They said no. Anthropic said no. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, says that he will have Anthropic labeled a, quote, risk to the supply chain and therefore controlled by the Defense Production Act. Bro, come on. This is insane fascism. Seriously. According to the Department of War, they want to use Claude to, quote, conduct domestic surveillance and engage in autonomous combat. What the fuck? Conduct domestic surveillance and engage in autonomous combat. And Anthropic was like, hell no, you can't use that. And Pete Hegseth was like, yes, we can. And then proceeded to do it anyways. They then used Claude to do their targeting system in the Iran war as well. So despite the fact that, Anthropic told them no, they just went ahead anyways. We've talked about before how Kristi Noem, the leader of the DHS, Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security, how she needs to be removed. We've talked about that before on the podcast. But I think I made a mistake in making such a suggestion because I forgot to consider that her replacement would only be more insane and more mentally ill than she is. So Kristi Noem was forced out by Trump, and you're wondering why. Was it because of all the crimes that Kristi Noem is committing with ICE? Is it because of perjury, misappropriation of funds, breaking several constitutional amendments? If you thought even a single one of those is the reason, you would be wrong. The actual reason that Trump removed Kristi Noem from the DHS is because she was wasting money on TV commercials. Trump didn't like that she was becoming popular and putting herself on TV. The dude's ego is insane. But Kristi Noem, she's like a porn star. She dresses up in every shitty outfit you can think of and then makes a commercial. She has commercials where she is dressed up as all of the following: Barbie, a Coast Guard agent, a policeman, a construction worker, a cowgirl, a biker, and a nurse. There's more. There's many, many more. So she was putting on shitty outfits and filming herself and putting commercials around the country, telling Americans to call and report their neighbors to ICE, which we've talked about in our episode called Dancing on Ice. So That's why he let go over. So Trump appoints this new guy. This new guy is named Mark Wayne Mullen. This guy is insane. Anger issues, multiple physical confrontations with senators. When Biden was president, Mark Wayne Mullen challenged a union representative from the Teamsters, one of the largest unions in the United States, challenged him to a fist fight in the Senate floor. This guy is crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now, what's even more funny is that Mark claims to be a Cherokee Native American, but he is as white as can be. He is as white as a feather. So if we're going to call Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas, then it's only fair that we call Mark Wayne by his new name, Tonto. Now, I almost wanted to call Mark Wayne Sitting Bull, another famous Native American in our history. But Sitting Bull fought against the United States, whereas Tonto is a fictional caricature, and he was used to make fun of. Tonto is a fictional character, and he was used as the butt of a joke. So I think Tonto is a more appropriate name. So from henceforth, on all this episode or future ones, we will be referring to the new head of the DHS, Mark Wayne Mullen, as Tonto. So I think that might be some of my best work right there. That might be some of my best work with that name. So yeah, Tonto is now in charge of the DHS. And we have a tremendous quote from another tremendous quote, and then we're going to move on to the economy. At a conference 2 days ago, this just happened. Trump said, quote, this is another, guys, I've done a lot of research for this episode. I don't know if you could tell. This is the most heavily researched episode I've ever done in the history of the No Good News podcast. Thank you. Thank you for the claps. I have done over 60 hours of direct research on this episode. And when I say direct, that's me like actively looking out information. If you include me just passively watching the news, which I do every day, it's easily over 100 hours. Part of that research was I watched over 10 hours of the Ben Shapiro show, so you viewers don't have to. That was brutal and grueling, listening to Ben Shapiro for 10 hours. But in all this research, I have a lot of great direct quotes. So here's another gem. Quote, this is Trump. 12 months ago, whoa. Wrong part of my notes. I'm sorry. I've got all the quotes lined up in my notes. I'm sorry about that, guys. Actual quote. I always like to hang around with losers because it makes me feel better. There's more. I always like to hang around with losers because it makes me feel better. I hate guys that are very, very successful and you have to listen to their success stories. I like people that like to listen to my success. I mean, what a banger quote. An absolute banger from President Trump. I mean, it just reveals so much about his psychology. And his cabinet picks, like Tonto, cross-eyed Kash Patel, and the Secretary of War Crimes, Pete Hegseth. Like, so much of his cabinet, J.D. Vance, like, so much of his cabinet makes sense because, quote, I always like to hang around with losers because it makes me feel better. Such an insane quote. I can't believe he actually said that. I mean, I've met people like this before in my personal life who don't like to be around successful people because they want to feel like they're the best person in the room. I've met these people and they're insufferable. I mean, personally, I prefer to be around other successful people, because then we can all grow and be better together, and I've never really been a jealous person. So I'm happy to reward others on their success. But clearly, like, that's not the case for Trump. And if I was a cabinet member of Trump's right now, like, I'd be fuming. Like, he literally just called all the people associated with him losers. And if you look back through his first term, the people he would let go were the competent people. That's why in the second term now, everything is so insane. Because all the competent people that were around him in Trump 1, those people are gone because they're too successful. And Trump likes to hang out with losers. So now we're going to pivot to the economy. Many avid listeners to this podcast will remember that Trump replaced the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I discussed this in a previous episode. And he replaced this individual, it was a Biden appointee, for over-reporting jobs that were then revised down. I'm sure many of you remember this segment. Well, 2025 just posted the largest downward revision of jobs in American history. But Trump was president for the whole year of 2025, and this new guy that he put in did a massive downward revision. Get ready for the number, guys. Here we go. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2025, the Bureau overestimated 1.1 million jobs inside of the United States. 1.1 million. It's the first time that the revision has ever cracked the 1 million record. In 2009, there was an 862,000 job markdown. But now this is 1.1 million. This means that after the revision, so after the downgrade, a grand total, this is the grand total, of only 180,000 jobs were created in the entire year of 2025 in the United States. 180,000 in the whole year. So it's now 180,000. Let's just round up and make it 200,000. They marked down by 1.1 million. So it used to be 1.3 million. Then with the markdown of 1.1 million, according to the government, only 180,000 jobs were created in the entire country for the entire year of 2025. This is literally like a depression. We are in a depression. I mean, we are in stagflation. We have insane unemployment and crazy inflation. And with the gas prices now, we're just getting started. Like this economy, it's going to torpedo, guys. It's going to kamikaze like a Japanese warfighter. It's going to be insane. I can't even believe the number. So this is Trump's America. And then they have the gall. They have the gall in that same report where they do a 1.1 million markdown for 2025. They have the gall to claim that in January of 2026, same report, same day release, that in January we created 130,000 jobs. So wait a minute. If 180,000 jobs were created in the entire year of 2025, we're supposed to believe that in January of 26, we created 130,000? Of course not. Like this is yet another over-report. The government says that unemployment in the United States is now 4.3% in January, which is down from 4.5%. Inflation is 2.9%. We're touching 3. Insane. And the January PPI, which is the Producer Price Index, which is a leading indicator of the CPI, of where the CPI will be, because producers feel the impact of price increases before they pass it on to consumers. We've discussed that before. In January alone, the PPI went up by 0.5%. That may not sound like a lot, but 0.5% over a 12-month period is 6% inflation. So in just the month of January, guys, remember, all of this is before the oil shock. All these numbers, the war with Iran didn't start until the end of February. But in January, we had 0.5% PPI. And then in February, the jobs report was negative 92,000. So according to the government, in February, we lost 92,000 jobs. So that 180 we gained, that's an overestimate. And this 92 that we lost, I think that's an underestimate. I think we probably lost more, honestly. Because they get that number from the number of people who file for unemployment. That's how they get that number. But many people lose their job and never file for unemployment. So that's a reason why I'm saying it's an underestimate. The Supreme Court struck down Trump's tariffs. Major win for the Supreme Court, showing that they still have some balls because they've just been letting Trump roll over them and commit crimes left and right. At least they showed that somewhat they still have kind of a backbone. Now, as a result of the tariffs being deemed unconstitutional, companies have sued the federal government for over $140 billion in refunds. Trump turns around after this ruling and then imposes a 15% tariff on all goods anyways under a different statute. So the Supreme Court overruled the tariffs under a law called IEEPA. We don't have to get into the specifics. but the IEEPA, IEEPA, those tariffs were deemed unconstitutional. The very next day, Trump turns around and reinstitutes 15% tariffs under a new statute called Section 122 of the tax code. This section only allows tariffs for 150 days, and they cannot be renewed without congressional approval. So let's be clear, these Section 122 tariffs are also unconstitutional, but by the time the Supreme Court would rule on it and a case was brought before them, more than 150 days would pass. Now, but Trump can't renew these, but we'll see. Knowing him, he'll do it anyways. Section 122 is allowed for, quote, balance of payment deficits, which does not apply here. So the law doesn't even apply. This is because a balance of payment deficit cannot exist. It can't even exist if a currency has a flexible exchange rate. Okay, we're getting technical here, guys. Economics time. Here we go. The United States dollar, since 1971, is no longer on the gold standard. Instead, we have what's called a floating exchange rate, which is when the US dollar, the exchange rate with other currencies changes in real time. And we call that the dollar index, which I've mentioned a few times here on the podcast. Well, a balance of payments deficit is mathematically impossible if you have a floating exchange rate, because a floating exchange rate adjusts for that in real time. If you have a gold standard, a balance of payments deficit is very possible, because a gold standard is a fixed exchange rate. Well, Section 122 is for when we have a fixed exchange rate, which we don't have anymore. So the entire law doesn't even apply. And this is actually a good example of how a ton of laws exist in this country that shouldn't exist anymore because they no longer apply. Section 122 is one of those. What's also funny about Section 122, which was established in the 1974 Trade Act, is that the Trade Act of 1974 was in drafts for many years. They were drafting the law for like 10 years. So by the time the law passed in 1974, Nixon had already ended the gold standard in 1971. But the law was so large that they didn't think to just go back and delete the entire section entirely. And another thing was at the time, when Nixon ended the gold standard, Nixon claimed it was a temporary measure at the time, which we now know wasn't true. So they might have left it in because they thought that maybe it would come back. The trade deficit for January came in at $100 billion in January. Well, Nick, maybe that's better. Maybe things are getting better because, maybe in previous months they were smaller. No, this is larger. We're at $100 billion in just the month of January. It's getting worse for those of you guys who are keeping count. Well, why did the trade deficit go up? Is it because we exported less, therefore we have less to fight against the imports? Or did the trade deficit go up because we imported more? So therefore, if our exports stay the same, but we import more, we still have a larger deficit. So did the deficit go up because we had more imports or because we had less exports? The answer is both. Imports increased by 3.3% and exports decreased by 2.9%. So we got fucked on both ends. This is why tariffs don't work, guys. This is why tariffs don't work. If you still know anyone that think tariffs work, just send them this way and have them listen to a few of these segments. I mean, I feel like I think at this point I've truly given a university level education on tariffs over the series of this podcast. So I know that I kind of just throw out the numbers now, but I've explained the concepts before. I mean, this is devastating for the Trump economy. We thought Bidenomics was bad. This is insane. As of March 6th, the labor force participation rate is now lower in the United States than it was during the depths of COVID. So in the depths of COVID, when everyone was getting laid off and no one was working, the labor force participation rate was higher than it is right now. I once again assert that we are in a stagflation, period. But really, there's no argument for depression. There's a genuinely argument for depression at this point. Now, so what are we going to do? We're having a massive recession. We're in stagflation. We're waging trade wars with our economic allies and enemies. Now would be the time to make some serious and powerful and influential economic choices. But instead, the administration, the regime, is redesigning our currency. Here we go. The new 250-year design of the dime will feature the American eagle, as it always has. But there's a noticeable change. In the past, the eagle had two things clutched in its right and left claws, an arrow and an olive branch. This signifies that the United States will always offer peace first, extending an olive branch. But if necessary, it will wage war with an arrow. Well, the new design got rid of the olive branch. And if one arrow wasn't enough to prove a point, the new American eagle is now using both of its claws to clutch a infinite number of arrows. If you look at the design, there's so many, it's like you can't even count them. It's like upwards of 10 arrows in the claws. The photo actually looks like the American eagle is like carrying. Have you ever seen a bird catch a fish, and when it flies away, the fish is so heavy that you can tell the bird is kind of being pulled down? That is how the new design looks. It looks like the bird is being pulled down by the weight of all of these arrows. It's truly a disgusting image for our country, and it is not a sign of good things to come. This is some good news. We'll end this segment with some good news, the economic news. Disney has exited. They've exited their $1 billion deal with OpenAI. We've discussed this on a previous episode, and I always like to stay current with the stories I tell you guys about. If you guys remember, they were going to allow OpenAI to create animations, in short, and basically it would destroy art as we know it. They've exited that deal. And OpenAI, in just the last 2 weeks, OpenAI is showing severe financial cracks and strain. It is actually legitimately possible that they will go bust. It's something where people always like, it's a bubble. But like, if you look at what's going on, they just had to close down a bunch of their major projects. Like, the company is in severe trouble. And I think that's a good thing, because I do not think they are a positive force for our country. So yeah, they're having some major issues. So that's enough on the economy. We are going to cut to our second ad break, and then finally, the segment you've all been waiting for. Summer registration is now open for Cheer Extreme. Our program has been #1 in Queen City for over a decade, and our prices reflect it. As Monarchs, we craft the athletes of tomorrow in all styles of dance, including tap, ballet, and contemporary. Every 3 weeks, the Cheer Extreme Monarchs will take you to a new corner of the American Southeast to compete against the other great teams within our conference. In a 14-hour contest, your daughter will slug it out with her peers by performing 7 complex and individually choreographed routines. If you can't make it out, no worries, because you can buy the footage of your child's performance directly from us. Personal recording is not allowed anyways. So what are you waiting for? Competition awaits, and the Monarchs need you. Welcome back from the ad break into what could potentially be the longest segment in NGN history. And I'm going to preface that segment with this information, because what is happening right now in the Middle East is so grievous that it deserves our full attention. And it really does deserve a well-explained and thought-out explanation. So I go to bed on a Friday night, and I wake up on Saturday, February the 28th, and we're at war with Iran. Just like that, boom. And that Friday night, I was in Wichita Falls at that Air Force base. And that night, we were at the bar on the base. I'm surrounded by these elite warriors. And the guy who's in charge does a toast. And in his toast, he says, "It's very likely that tomorrow we will be at war in the Middle East." And well, he was fucking right. He was exactly right. In fact, just 5 hours after he gave that toast, we launched our attacks. It was nighttime here in America, but it was daytime in Iran when the war started. And, we need to understand the history of this region. That's very important. And of course, I'm not going to go back, but, I'm not going to, but a little bit needs to be understood. So today, Islam rules over the Middle East. Portions of the European Balkan states as well are run by Islam, like, areas near Bulgaria. Countries like that. The Balkans, they're called. And all of North Africa, including Egypt and Libya, are ruled by Islam today. Prior to Muslim conquest, Egypt and Libya were Christian for over 600 years under the Romans. That's a long time. And in response to the Muslim expansion, so Islam took over North Africa, and Christianity was no longer in charge here. When I was in Egypt, I went to these really, really old churches, the Coptic churches. It's a region of Cairo in Egypt with Christian churches. So in response to these acts of aggression and expansion by the Muslims, the Christians launched a series of wars to retake the Holy Land. Okay? These wars were called the Crusades. There have been 9 Crusades, many with their own niche names that have been lost to history. But time is a circle, and old habits die hard. And as I'm sure you really understand as a viewer, the war that has begun will become a great war that will reshape the Middle East. And in the press today, when you open the paper, the news has dubbed this war, this conflict. Some people aren't even calling it a war, which is absurd. But they've dubbed this war the Iran War. But I want to anoint this 10th crusade with a special name, with a name that will last for centuries. This is our crusade, the American Crusade, where Christians of the West will once again convince themselves that they can retake the Holy Land and reign supreme over the Middle East. Notice how I say convince ourselves. Only this time, the forces of the West have made a choice, a mistake so grievous and retarded that none before them have even considered the notion. The Christian Crusaders have allied themselves with the enemy. They have allied themselves with the Jewish Zionists. The Crusaders are led by 3 key leaders. Foremost, they are led by the chief Zionist, Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. Secondly, they are led by President Donald J. Trump, who seeks legitimacy and legacy by putting his name on as many wars and treaties as possible. Lastly, the Crusaders are led by the USA's Secretary of War Crimes, Pete Hegseth. Hegseth is a self-defined Christian Crusader and Christian Zionist, which he outlines in his 2011 book, The American Crusade, which can be found in the description of this podcast. So now that we've given a good interlude to this conflict, this Iran war, this American Crusade, let's first talk about the nature of the American Empire. You see, all these wars, the Vietnam War, the Iran War, the Iraq War, all of these wars are named after the country that we attack. Because if they were named after the aggressor, they would all be called the American War. And it would be too confusing to keep count. The United States, it's more true than false to make this statement. Since our founding, the United States has never been at peace. Since our founding, approximately 250 years ago, we have been in a constant state of war. Now, it was only in recent history that these wars started to become Christian wars, religious wars, ultimately culminating in this war and our crusade. But just like the Crusaders of old, we are about to discover a harsh reality which is that we, the American Empire, are not equipped to defeat one of the oldest civilizations on Earth. And that civilization is Iran, formerly known as a much more elegant name, Persia. The Persians have been here much longer than the Americans. And they will probably be here. They were here before us, and they will probably be here for much longer than we will be as well. Persia has existed for a very long time, one of the oldest civilizations on Earth, up there with the Chinese. I'm actually pretty sure that Persia has existed longer than Russia, just to give some context. Like, that is how old they are. So, what is happening here? Well, prior to the invasion, I'm just looking at reports. I'm just reading the news. I'm trying to follow the situation. I have a bad feeling in my stomach about it, but I was following it at the time. 50%, that's right, half of the entire Air Force's military power was stationed outside of Iran. Half. So when I saw that, and then it was something like 40% of our Navy. So when I saw that half of our Air Force and almost half of our Navy was outside of Iran, I said to myself, I was like, we're definitely going to attack this country. Like, this is not going to be a good situation. Then, in an interview that occurred just before the war, Tucker Carlson was speaking with Mike Huckabee. Mike Huckabee is the U.S. ambassador to Israel, which means that his job is to represent the United States in foreign affairs with Israel. But it becomes very clear in this interview that Mike Huckabee might as well just be an agent for Israel. He might as well just be on their payroll. When asked directly, Tucker Carlson says, quote, he says this to Mike Huckabee. He says, quote, "You say Israel has a divine right to this land that extends from the Nile to the Euphrates. The Nile River is in Egypt, and the Euphrates is in Iraq." Mike Huckabee responds, quote, "It would be fine if they took it all." Yikes. So it's no surprise that we started the war. And yes, we started this war. Do not listen to any propaganda that we had to do this war, that Iran was building a nuclear weapon. Remember, according to Trump, last year in Operation Midnight Hammer, we destroyed all of Iran's nuclear capabilities. We've discussed it on this podcast. So wait a second. If we've destroyed their nuclear capabilities, what do you mean they're building a nuclear weapon? And also remember that Trump left the Obama nuclear deal, which he signed with Iran, which Iran was following, and they weren't making nuclear weapons. So Trump left the agreement, which instigated the development of nuclear weapons. Then Trump bombed the facilities and said we destroyed them all, and said it wouldn't be an issue, and that it would take years for that to become a new issue. But now he's saying that they do have that they're developing nuclear weapons. And on top of all that, the leader of Iran, his name was Ayatollah Khomeini, or Khomeini. It's hard to pronounce. We're going to call him Khomeini, okay? He had what's called a fatwa. A fatwa is a religious edict, okay? And he had a fatwa against the development of nuclear weapons. A religious edict. Now, does that mean that they weren't developing them? Probably. But maybe, I mentioned this not as conclusive evidence that they weren't making a nuke, but as very strong supportive evidence, okay? Because these people take religion very seriously. Well, that guy's dead now. The guy who made that fatwa, we killed him. That was actually the first thing we did. So here we go. On the 28th, and I think the best way to talk about this war is just to give you guys a time lapse. And we'll just go from the start until now and keep you guys in tune with all the developments that have happened. So on the 28th, this is day one, the USA and Israel attack Iran. Iran retaliates by bombing our bases in Kuwait, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and Qatar. Yes, that is 6 countries. You heard that correctly. The USA and Israel kills most, in the initial strike, we killed most of the leaders of Iran, including the leader, the Ayatollah, Khomeini. We also killed Khomeini's wife, and we killed, Khomeini has a son, okay? by the same name, same last name. This son is now the current Ayatollah. And the son had a wife and a child. And in the missile strike, we killed his wife and his child and his father and basically his entire direct family. Does this sound like somebody who's going to negotiate with the United States? I don't fucking think so. We have turned a bad situation into an impossible situation. We also killed the head of their defense, the head of the IRGC, which is the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps. Think of them as like the elite army, because Iran has 3 armies. They have the IRGC, which is like the elite stormtroopers. Think of them like that. Like they guard Darth Vader, okay? Then they've got the standard army, and then they have what is called the internal police, which is not like American police. They're definitely military, but it's the same thing in Egypt. Like they're like internal police. It just means the military that controls the public. Think of it like that. We killed the head of the IRGC, which is the most powerful and radical part of their government. We killed not only the head of the defense, but their defense minister, the chief of staff, all the people that run their nuclear program, and all the leaders of their intelligence agency. Let's be real. That's pretty fucking effective. I mean, that is a great way to eliminate all of the key players that we're fighting against. So if you're going to go to war, which I wouldn't advise against Iran, but if you're going to do it, you want to take out the top people. So fine. Okay. But you want to leave enough top people to negotiate with at least some of them. But according to Trump, we killed so many people in charge. We not only killed the first rung, the top layer. We killed 3 layers deep in Iran, to the point where now today there's basically no one left to even negotiate with, because the country is in a state of disarray, and the entire military has become fractionalized, where individual commanders are controlling their own units because there's no one in charge at the top. So they've basically become a guerrilla army. They weren't one, but we have forced them to become that, because the central command of their military is now dead because we killed them all. So we kill the entire regime, but then Trump comes out and says it's not a regime change war. Okay, fine. And Trump says that we didn't do this to free the people of Iran, but now they could rise up and be free. I'm giving you guys what he said at the time. We also destroyed their nuclear program last year, according to Trump, but then he turns around and says that we can't let them get nuclear weapons. He gave like 5 different reasons within a 3-minute period for starting the war. But there is a real reason that we went to war that no one's actually talking about in the media. And the reason we went to war is for Israel. We went to war for Israel. And how do we know this? Well, we know this because Marco Rubio admitted it on live television. When asked why we attacked Iran, Rubio says it's because Israel was going to attack, and we knew that Iran would respond by attacking us. It was decided that if we strike first, we could mitigate our losses. That comes from Marco Rubio on TV. So why did we start this war? We started this war because Israel told us, hey guys, we're going to attack. And you're either with us or not. And we were like, well, I guess we have to attack as well. But that's our fault. Because number one, we shouldn't have amassed so much military power there. Number one. And number two, we should have controlled Israel and reined them in. You know, we should have done that. Or we should have contacted Iran through back channels and been like, hey, Israel's about to attack you. We don't support this. We're not involved in this. But no, of course, we decide to attack. Terrible decision. So from this point forward, I need you to understand as a viewer and listener of this podcast that the narrative being said on TV is not true. Israel is not, let me say that again, Israel is not our ally in this fight. Israel is our chief enemy. The number one enemy in this war is Israel. Israel has infiltrated and infected the entire U.S. government. They have corrupted the ideology of our government, and they have turned us into Zionists. They have corrupted the Christians that run the U.S. government, which is supposed to be secular, by the way. The U.S. is supposed to have separation of church and state, but they have corrupted our government and turned our leaders into Zionists. They have blackmail on our leaders, including President Trump, as we've discovered through the Epstein files. And through AIPAC, they buy off and corrupt almost every senator and representative in the House. Israel is the chief villain in this war and the number one nemesis to the United States. You must view this war through that lens. If you view this war as a conflict between the United States and Iran, you are simply not understanding the bigger picture. Trump always talks about the enemy within. And he's kind of right, because the enemy within is Israel. They have destroyed everything that the United States stands for. Well, Nick, how do we know that this was a religious war? How do we know that we did this? How can we know that this war is a crusade? Why is this war not like the Iraq War? You know, that was a war in the Middle East when we bombed and killed brown people, Muslims, but it wasn't a crusade. How can you so confidently assert that this 10th crusade is the American crusade? And here's how we know. Prior to the attack, soldiers in the United States military were told that Donald Trump is, quote, this is a direct quote, anointed by Jesus Christ to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and make Jesus' return to earth. That's a direct quote. Well, did one person say that? We have over 110 complaints of this direct quote being said by different soldiers in over 40 military units at over 30 military bases. So no, this is not what we call an isolated incident. It happened at over 30 military bases and across at least 40 units, military units. Trump is, quote, anointed by Jesus Christ to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon. Insane. Absolute insanity. We are fighting a crusade. So then, Iran attacks all 6 GCC countries. The GCC is very important. This war has basically 5 key players, okay? The United States, Iran, Israel, the GCC, and everyone else, okay? So the GCC, I forget what it stands for. It's Gulf, producer, can we look up what GCC stands for? Thank you. It stands for Gulf something cooperation, I think. But I know what 6 countries it is. The GCC is 6 American colonies. That's right. They're American colonies in the same way that Japan is an American colony. Oh, the Gulf Cooperation Council. Okay, I got the G right. Gulf. And it's the Persian Gulf. These are 6 countries that touch the Persian Gulf. And these 6 countries are Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Oman. And these 6 countries are what we call American colonies or client states. And their foreign policy and their governments and their economies are basically run by the United States. We use the GCC countries to prop up the American empire because the GCC countries only sell their oil in US dollars. The GCC countries are the reason that the petrodollar exists. We have discussed the petrodollar on this podcast before. The GCC is the heart of the petrodollar system. And they are major players within OPEC, which we've also discussed on this podcast before. an alliance of oil and petroleum exporting countries, OPEC. So Iran attacks all 6 GCC countries. And the GCC countries put up their hands and they're like, why are you doing that? And Iran's like, well, because you're a client state of the United States. You host their military bases. And this attack on our homeland was launched from military bases inside of your country. All of these are fair. I mean, even one of those would be enough. But all 3 of those are fair. Okay? So, yeah, they slam the GCC countries. And immediately when the war starts, all these foreigners that go to Dubai or Abu Dhabi on vacation, all this bullshit, they immediately leave. They fly home. They get out of there as fast as they can. But a lot of people got stuck and are still stuck because the airspace is grounded. Then we get reports that Iran is launching drones, autonomous drones. They're one-way. These things have a one-way trip. They fly very slow, and they have a very small radar cross-section. You can fit over 10 of them onto a single pickup truck, like a truck bed. That's how small they are, guys. But they have explosive ordnance on them. So they're not massive bombs, but the explosives are good enough to do a precise, a precision strike. And they fly very slowly. Iran launches these things all over the Middle East. And they launch a bunch of missiles. Trump gets on TV and says, we have destroyed the entire Iranian Navy. That is only basically true. The Navy that exists left, the Navy that is left of Iran is enough to launch small little missiles into boats that try to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Let's talk about what that is. Key vocab term. The Strait of Hormuz is kind of a misnomer because it's really straits, pleurisy. There are 3 straits in Hormuz. 3 straits. 2 of these straits are owned and controlled by the United Arab Emirates. And the 3rd strait is controlled by Iran. Through these 3 straits, 20% of the entire world's oil is shipped through. 20%. 1/5 of the world's oil goes through the straits. And the GCC countries all ship their oil out through the straits, including Iran. But Iran's not part of the GCC. So 7 countries export their oil through the strait. Actually, 8. Iraq does as well. But Iraq is not in the GCC. So 8 countries ship their oil through the straits. All 6 GCC members, Iraq and Iran. Immediately, Iran closes the straits once the war starts. According to internal sources, this is an insane thing. I can't even believe that this is true. But Trump has actually verbally confirmed this to be true. Apparently, the U.S. military never considered that Iran would close the straits. So the United States never considered that Iran would do the one thing that gives them leverage in this war. We are actually retarded. Truly retarded. I cannot believe this. Now, the generals were telling this to Trump and to Vance, but Trump and Vance didn't believe them and didn't even consider it as a possibility. Trump thought this war would end in 72 hours. He thought it would be like Venezuela, that we could just extract or kill the leadership and then they would come to negotiate. Trump's an actual retard. And yeah, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. He is actually retarded. So then we get reports. This is on the 28th. This is all the first day, guys. We're still on the first day of the war. The United Kingdom says that a drone hit their base in Cyprus. Cyprus is an island south of Turkey, and it is occupied by both Turkey. Turkey owns half the island, but the other half of the island has a British military base on it, okay? And Britain says, we got hit by a drone. Major alarm bells. NATO, Trump calls on NATO to join the war against Iran because Iran attacked NATO territory. Trump also calls on NATO to join the war because the United States has been attacked. Because our military bases count as sovereign American soil, which should trigger Article 5 of NATO. But I'm very proud of NATO. They said no. NATO has not joined this war. Now, there's really two things going on there. Number one, NATO made the right decision. But number two, NATO will never look the same after this war. Because Article 5 was rightfully, the rest of Europe is arguing that the United States started this war and that it's a war of choice, and therefore they have no obligation to join. Now, technically speaking, that isn't really spelled out in Article 5, but I like that argument. So, because once again, my goal, my selfish interest in this conflict is twofold. One, end the war as quickly as possible, and two, hope that Iran does maximum damage to Israel. Those are my two bifurcating goals in this conflict. So the UK says that a drone hit their base in Cyprus. But then we get this quote, another fascinating quote. This is from the UK military. Quote, "The drone did not come from Iran." What? Wait a minute. The drone didn't come from Iran. Where did it come from? They then examined the debris of this drone. The drone is not a Shahed. The Shaheds are the drones that Iran uses. The drone is an Israeli model. False flag operation by Israel to drag NATO and the rest of Europe into this war against Iran. We then discover that Qatar captures and arrests at least 2 Mossad agents that were in the act of espionage in their country, also trying to escalate the war. What many people often forget is that Israel is not an ally. Israel is the worst friend. Who needs enemies when you have friends like Israel? Israel attacked the USS Liberty in the 6 Days War, which was in the producer, can we look this up? When was the 6 Days War? I know that LBJ was president, so I believe it was in the 60s. I think it was in 1967, 1968. How close am I? Oh, I'm dead on. 1967. Wow, that's incredible. I'm actually impressed by that. So in the 6 Days War, Israel attacked the USS Liberty, which was an American naval vessel. They killed over 100 sailors. So these are, members of the Navy. And then they came back and they did a double tap, which is when you do an attack and then you cycle back to kill the first responders. This is what Israel does in Gaza, by the way. So we got double tapped by Israel in the 6 Days War, even though we were on their side. And we now know, we speculate, but this is pretty much confirmed, that they attacked the USS Liberty and they destroyed its antennas because we were able to hear what the Israeli pilots were saying in their cockpits. And they were discussing how they were going to take Sinai and the Golan Heights, which the United States did not approve of. And that is the leading theory as to why they attacked us. LBJ then committed an act of treason by giving a stand-down order and telling the U.S. Navy to not fire back against the Israeli Air Force. Insane story there. I personally believe that Mossad and Israel killed JFK. And I feel that way because JFK refused to share nuclear secrets and proliferation with Israel. He didn't want Israel to have nuclear weapons. But we know we basically know, we used to know, but now we know for a fact, because Israel has confirmed it since this war started, that Israel has nuclear weapons. And it's very, very widely believed that Israel built their nuclear weapons during the 6 Days War, shortly after the war ended, while LBJ was president. So there's very strong evidence to suggest that Israel killed JFK because JFK would not share nuclear secrets with them and wouldn't allow them to have nukes. So I kind of got off the timeline there, but I'm telling you about this because Israel has already been caught doing 2 false flag operations in this war. Then Iran closes the strait, and we do something fascinating. And fascinating is the wrong word. Evil is a better word. We commit a war crime. In our opening strikes against Iran, we bomb a school full of children, and we kill over 100 young girls who were at school. We bombed a school. We bombed hospitals, schools, and civilian infrastructure. All of these are war crimes. That's why we called Mr. Hegseth the Secretary of War Crimes. We have committed more war crimes just right now. The last time we committed this many war crimes in such a short period was Vietnam. That is how many war crimes the U.S. military has committed in just the last 30 days. Okay? Then the USA announces, so Trump announces that the federal government will be insuring, so providing insurance to any vessels that pass through the strait. So Iran closes the strait and they start torpedoing oil vessels and sinking oil vessels. And the world is like, we are not going through the strait. We're trapped. We're not leaving, obviously. And the insurance companies out of Britain, there's one insurance company that has essentially a monopoly over all oil shipments that come out of the Strait of Hormuz. And the name of this company is Lloyd's of London. You can look them up. They issue insurance for these oil vessels. They charge a fee, and then you can go through the strait. And they issue insurance because Iran is a hostile state. Lloyd's came out once the war started and said, we are doing force majeure. And you're going to want to learn that term because it's going to come up a few more times. Force majeure is when a company breaks their contract due to extreme extenuating circumstances. So due to the war and due to Iran destroying these ships, Lloyd's does force majeure and turns off and disables all of their insurance. So now, because of this, none of these boats can get insurance to go through the strait. And Trump says, don't worry about it. We'll give you insurance. So if your boat gets destroyed, we'll pay for it. What a terrible idea. I mean, Iran can destroy these boats with ease, and that's what they've been doing. So Trump says that we've destroyed the Air Force and destroyed the Navy. And that's basically true, but the thing is, Iran doesn't need an Air Force, and Iran doesn't need a Navy. All they need is an army, drones, and a missile program. And they have all 3. They don't need an Air Force. They don't need a Navy. They're fighting what we call asymmetric warfare. No military can face the United States head on. So you have to do guerrilla tactics. And they have spent 40 years preparing for this war. And clearly, we didn't even spend more than 3 months. Once again, we shouldn't have done it at all, but if we were going to do it, we should have been prepared. And we should have known that they were going to close the strait. So, we then learn on the 29th, we're now on the 29th, that not only did Israel kill leaders of the Iranian government, as we did, they also killed the chief opposition leaders within Iran. These are the people that were protesting against the government. And these are the kind of people that we would want to install. You tracking with me, producer? Mm-hmm. Israel killed them. Israel killed the chief opposition leaders. And they did this because our goals in this war are different than Israel's. We want a swift end to this war, and we want someone to negotiate with. Israel wants to turn Iran into a failed state. That's what they want. So Israel killed the opposition leaders. Nice. Great job, Israel. Then there is talk of desalination plants. A desalination plant is when you turn salt water into fresh water. These countries are deserts. They don't have any water sources. Here's some numbers. Saudi Arabia gets 70% of their drinking water from desalination plants. 70%. The UAE, 96% of their drinking water. Even 70 is insane, but 96. Kuwait, Oman, and Qatar, all of them, 90%. and Bahrain 60%. So even the one that is most insulated, being Bahrain, even if they lose 60% of their water, like, people are going to die. You need fresh water in a desert. I mention this because Israel starts attacking desalination plants in Iran. And Iran says, if you do that again, we will attack the desalination plants of the GCC nations. Yeah, I know. Not good. Well, Trump gets involved, and so do the GCC countries. The GCC countries at this point, they're just getting hit left and right. You've got false flags from Israel. The United States, oh, I forgot to mention this, we didn't defend them. Once our bases got destroyed that we launched the attack from, Iran sent missiles at all of our bases. All of our bases in the Middle East are now deemed inoperable. The closest base we have that's operational and deemed safe to Iran is in Jordan, which is very far. I'd actually recommend that, I don't know if I've said this in a previous episode, but I'd recommend that our listeners pull out Google Maps and start looking at a map of the Middle East here. And you'll realize that when you have your closest safe base in Jordan, that's a major issue. So all of our bases closer than Jordan, if we are using them, they're deemed compromised and unsafe. So simply being on the base means that you could lose your life. Then, on the 30th, Trump says that Israel needs to pardon Bibi Netanyahu. So in the middle of a war that we were cucked into entering, Trump goes on TV and says that Israel should pardon Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi is under investigation. I mean, he's guilty for committing crimes, judicial crimes, in Israel. But he started the war in Gaza, and by doing so, remember, that was under Biden's presidency. By doing so, he's been able to defer and postpone and freeze the investigation. So as long as perpetual war is done, then Bibi is safe from prosecution. So we are totally tied up. Our bases are destroyed. Iran is launching missiles at us. We are launching missiles at Iran. Israel destroys a oil refining facility in Tehran, the capital. And this is insane footage. I thought it was AI. I had to make sure it wasn't, but we now confirm that it's not. The entire sky of Tehran was black. Fire is raging thousands of feet into the sky like a nuclear weapon. Israel attacks an oil refining facility. Poisonous oil and gas is released into the atmosphere. The sky was black, not gray, not purple like India, black and on fire. And then there were reports that it was raining oil in Iran. Raining oil. Cancerous poison rain in Iran from attacking a facility. The images are so unreal. Literally, the skies lit up with fire. Unbelievable. It looks like a volcano has erupted in the middle of the city. Major war crime. But this shouldn't surprise us because this, the producers show me photos and I'm laughing because how insane it is. This should not be a surprise because of the crimes that we know Israel has committed in Gaza. This should not surprise us all. In fact, what they've done in Iran is nothing compared to what they've done to Gaza. We are totally overextended. Totally overextended. We are fighting wars all over the world, and we are losing major inventory and American lives in the Middle East. If China was, really, China should just invade Taiwan right now. We wouldn't even be able to stop it. Then, as a part of the blockage of the Straits, Europe has to start buying oil from Russia, who they are currently at war with via proxy in the Ukraine. So now Russia is earning income by selling oil to Europe and using that money to fund their war machine in Ukraine. Like, how did no one think of this? Where is the tactical leaders? I would have thought of this. Where is the leadership? This is unreal. Guys, let me be very clear. We are not going to win this war. we're not going to win this war, because even if the strait reopened today, the GCC countries will now have to think twice about allying with us. Number one, we've lost our standing on the international globe, on the world stage. NATO has fractured. Europe doesn't trust us anymore. We've screwed over our colonies in Asia, like Korea and Japan, because they get all their oil from the Middle East. This war has proven to our allies that we will selfishly enter wars of choice rather than considering them, without even consulting them. And that is why we have already lost this war. No matter what happens from here, all that can happen from here is that we lose to a greater extent. But even if the war ended today, we've lost. This war, I believe, marks the end of the American empire. That's truly how I feel. It marks the end of the empire. We'll still have influence in Europe, and we'll still do our best to control the South America with the Monroe Doctrine. But our claims to the Middle East, they'll never be the same after this. I mean, it might as well just say it's over. We'll have Japan and Korea, but we've lost Australia. Australia's paying $13 a gallon for gasoline. Now, they do liters. They do liters, not gallons. But if you convert it, they're paying $13 a gallon for gasoline. And according to the Department of Energy in Australia, they have 9 days left until the nation needs to declare power outages and extreme rationing. 9 days, guys. 9 days. That's nothing. That's another week. I mean, some of you may not. I know many of our listeners don't listen once this episode comes out. By the time you're listening, Australia might already be in crisis. We already see that the Philippines, Vietnam, tons of Asian countries are making people work from home. They're closing schools. They're having students work from home. This is already happening. The world is already starving of oil, and they're out of energy because they get all of their oil from Iran or from the Straits. This is not good, guys. We have started the war that will end the empire. Then Israel goes and attacks more oil depots. They attack the South Pars gas facility. It's a gas bed. The South Pars facility is a bed of natural gas underground, and it is controlled by Qatar and Iran, half and half. Qatar has what's called the North Pars, P-A-R-S, the North Pars field, and Iran has the south part of the field, okay, because of the way the international border is drawn in the ocean, in the Persian Gulf. Israel attacks the field. So what does Iran do? They attack Qatar's field. According to Qatar, let me find the direct quote here. It's going to take me a second. I'm sorry, guys. I just want to be exact. Okay, here we go. We got it. Qatar supplies 20%, Qatar alone supplies 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas. 20%, okay? Due to the damages, the CEO of Qatar Energy has said that, quote, 17% of the field's production will be offline for the next 3 to 5 years. That is correct. So, this country produces 20% of the world's LNG, and of that 20%, 17%, so let's just round up and say 20% of the 20%, which is a fifth of 20, which is 4. So in a single attack, the world lost 4% of its LNG supply for the next 3 to 5 years. Absurd. Keep in mind that the demand for LNG is going up, not down. And that is just from Qatar. Remember, Israel destroyed Iran's infrastructure. That might be another 4% of the world's supply. This is not good, guys. So that means if the war ends today, it takes 3 to 5 years just to reset the clock. They also said that it's going to take something like $200 billion to repair the facility. I mean, what are we doing? Why are we doing these attacks? Why are we supporting Israel? And why are we not taking them off the board? They are a huge liability right now, a huge liability. Then we learn that Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina, traveled to Israel several times during the weeks leading up to the war. He was coached by Israeli intelligence on how to convince Trump to go to war. How do we know this is true? Lindsey Graham said as much on Fox News. So literally just outing yourself as a foreign agent, that, guys, is a treasonous crime. Lindsey Graham should be in jail because he is what we call an undeclared foreign intelligence operative. What is going on? The entire government is corrupted, totally destroyed. Iran then releases a message and they say, quote, Iran does not want to harm ordinary Americans who overwhelmingly voted to end involvement in costly foreign wars. Now, that's a powerful quote. And that's a powerful quote because the Trump regime said that Iran was going to launch attacks on American soil, like terrorist attacks. And Iran came out and said, we're not going to do that. We know that the American people don't want this war. So we're not going to attack them. That's a very powerful statement because if Iran didn't say that, it's possible that some Americans would have fallen for the fear-mongering. But in this war, this PR war, this press war, Iran is winning the propaganda war, even among Americans. I mean, I'll admit it. They're winning it for me. I'm taking Iran's side right now. As in, I do not support our military involvement in this war. Now, I don't want our guys to be killed, our troops to be killed, but I say we shouldn't even be there in the first place. We shouldn't have started this war, and we shouldn't be there. So I support the United States military, but I do not support our action in this war. We should leave the Middle East, and we should abandon Israel. So now we're up to the fact that 30% of the world's fertilizer goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Producer, did you know that? No. 30% of the world's fertilizer, I had no idea. And something like 15 to 30%, it varies, of the world's helium comes through the straits. Helium is needed to make microchips. So Taiwan's cooked. So we can expect to see microchip costs go way up, including AI costs and data centers. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. The Federal Reserve says that now they may raise interest rates, not lower them, because they expect inflation to come. And that's fine. They need to raise interest rates. I've felt that way since even before this war. But they need to raise interest rates a lot. But now the Fed is saying they may raise interest rates, and that upset Trump. So Trump comes out and attacks Jerome Powell for even suggesting that we might raise interest rates. It's like, dude, you started a global oil shock. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, we've got to raise interest rates because we got to try to have at least some protection from inflation in this country. Also, like, people don't understand how big Iran is. Iran is the most populous nation that the United States has ever attacked. You heard that correct. Of all the nations the United States has ever attacked in its history, Iran is the most populous. 90 million people live in Iran. Guys, you can't just do a 72-hour drone strike, kill the leadership, and walk away and win a war on a country that has 90 million people. One of the oldest civilizations on Earth. And they are a mountain fortress. Iran has basically, I think the last time Iran was successfully invaded by a foreign power was Genghis Khan. I think that's actually true. Because they're a mountain fortress. They have what's called the Zagros Mountains. And the Zagros Mountains, you should look these up, they form a western border of Iran. And these are some of the harshest mountains on Earth. Basically impassable. And that's why they're so hard to invade. But Iran is the most populous nation we have ever attacked. And we are killing civilians. And we're creating no wonder that they call us the Great Satan. Then we are now up to approximately March 14th. So we're moving along swiftly here. Israel uses the war with Iran as a cover-up to invade Lebanon. Yes, you heard that correctly. I'm sure many of you listening didn't even know that's happening right now. But Israel is currently invading Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon, which is to their north, where Hezbollah is. But Hezbollah is not really the bad guy. I hate to say it, but it's true. They are defending their country from a fascist rogue regime, which is Israel. So let me give you guys some numbers. Israel has conscripted, here's the number, get ready, 450,000 soldiers to invade Lebanon. 450,000. Producer, could we look up the population of Israel? 450,000. That has to be. I mean, for context, guys, the entire U.S. military is projected or predicted to have about 1.2 million members. So in a country of the United States with 350 million people, our military has 1 million people. That's a pretty standard ratio. You could even argue it's an elevated ratio because we have such a huge military. Israel has a population of 10 million people, and they have called up 450,000. That's 5% of their population. Insanity. There have been mass riots in the street. People don't, even the people of Israel, they don't want this war anymore. They thought that they were God's chosen people and that they were invincible from attack. No, that is clearly not the case. They're invading Lebanon right now. They bombed Lebanon University. They have destroyed all highways and bridges that connect the country. So in Lebanon, there's a river called the Litani River, Litani. You can look it up if you want. The Litani River is, the land south of this river is approximately 20% of Lebanon's landmass. Israel has destroyed all bridges and highways that cross the Litani River. And Israel has announced officially that they intend to invade Lebanon and occupy all land up to the river. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. And this is happening right now, and no one's talking about it in the United States because we're all just talking about Iran, which is Israel's goal. That's their whole point. Iran then comes out on the 14th and says that the straits are not closed and that nations are welcome to use them as long as they do not A, harbor American military bases, B, they are not the United States or Israel, and C, will pay for their oil in yuan, Chinese yuan. Here we go, guys. The end of the petrodollar is right in front of us. It hasn't happened just yet, but we are dancing with the devil, and we have to be careful. So as of now, any oil that passes through the Straits of Hormuz is being paid for in yuan, and they're paying a 2 million USD fine for every ship that goes through. So if you want to send a ship through, pay Iran $2 million. I forget if it's 2 million or 20 million. It's one of those. Then we have a guy named Joe Kent. Joe Kent works for the United States military and for the security apparatus. He's also a veteran, and he lost his wife. He served in the Middle East, and his wife was killed in combat. Okay? He resigns, blames Israel for the war, and says that the United States is controlled by Israel. This is like our top guy. Below Tulsi Gabbard, he's number 2 in the intelligence service. He resigns and blames Israel for the war. He then goes on Tucker Carlson and does an incredible interview. Tucker Carlson has been doing some excellent journalism recently. Excellent journalism. I mean, if they give out awards for journalists and shit like that, he needs an award for the journalism he's been doing recently. His interview with Joe Kent, which can be found on YouTube, I really think it's a must-watch for all Americans, I don't think you should be allowed to have an opinion on this war until you've watched the interview with Joe Kent. I feel like it should be required learning material. Then, out of nowhere, a random, beep, 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 just a random news story comes out that the United States government has opened a criminal investigation into Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, who we've discussed in a previous episode. Guys, we might try to kidnap this guy just like we do with Maduro. Genuinely. They're laying the groundwork. They've opened an investigation. And then I see another story that as of the 21st of March, the United States has a full blockade of Cuba. Guys, it's the Cuban Missile Crisis all over again. We're allowing no ships or any cargo into Cuba. The country has no power. As you listen to this right now and as we record, Cuba has no electricity. There's like 3 hotels in the whole country that have electricity, and that's because the United States is allowing those hotels to have electricity because the hotels are owned by foreigners, not by Cubans. Cuba is starving right now, and we are blockading the whole country. So we are laying the groundwork for a Colombian invasion. We are laying the groundwork for a Cuban invasion. We have just launched military, they're calling them narco raids, like drug raids, in Ecuador. That just started 3 weeks ago as well. Ecuador, Cuba, Colombia, Yemen, Iraq. What is going on? Iran. We are at war all over the place. We are so overextended. It's crazy. A gentleman by the name of Raz Cohen, R-A-Z-C-O-H-E-N, Raz Cohen. He is an IDF soldier. He was indicted for giving Iran GPS coordinates of Iron Dome missile batteries for just the low price of 1,000 USD. So there are not only agents inside of Iran that report against them, but there are now Israelis who are turning against their own country. That's how you know it's not going well. The USA then kills 15 Iraqis with an airstrike in the Anbar province of Iraq. They were part of Shia militias. Okay, we did this on the 24th and the 25th. So you guys can tell today's the 29th, so we're getting really close to present day. We kill 15 Iraqis. The government of Iraq comes out and tells the USA that they have violated their sovereignty and that they will be holding a vote on their right to respond. The USA then negotiates a truce. Okay. And we evacuate our military personnel from all bases in Iraq. That was Iraq's stipulation. Once we evacuate our personnel, we drone strike the Iraqi commander that we negotiated the deal with. We do this very often. For those of you in the audience that are shocked and confused, we do this all the time. It's common practice. We do this all the time. Well, Iraq, as of today, has entered the war against the United States. For good reason. Because we killed 15 of their people, signed a truce, and then killed the person that we signed the truce with. So Iraq has now entered the war. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. So Trump, at this point, I think needs to just step down. He needs to step down from being president. I think if that happened, Iran might take it easy on us. They're going to keep the war going until November when the Democrats win the midterms and then vote against the war. By then, it might be too late. And you know what? The Democrats probably won anyway. They're controlled by the Zionists as well. Guys, I think we're just cooked, genuinely. Then in the midst of all this, the United States, this is an insane number. I had to fact check this. The USA has seized 20,000 ounces of gold from Venezuela. That shipment just hit our docks a few days ago. 20,000 ounces of gold from Venezuela. Unbelievable. I forget the dollar amount that they put the shipment on, but the Secretary of Interior, his name is Doug Burgum. I believe he was the one that gave the press conference, and he gave a dollar figure of how much the gold was worth, but it's 20,000 ounces of gold. Then the New York Times.
90 million?
Thank you, producer. $90 million. I mean, I guess that's 20,000 times 4,500 approximately. Okay, there you go. 90 million. There you go. So we took $90 million worth of gold from Venezuela. Then the New York Times confirms that the protests in Iran back in January, there were major protests in Iran. And I don't know if I mentioned it on a previous episode. We may have had to cut it out. But it left 3,000 dead. The Iranian military killed 3,000 civilians for protesting back in January. As of today, the New York Times has confirmed from inside sources that these, of course, these protests were incited by Mossad to give casus belli to the United States. Casus belli translates to, it's a Latin term for cause for war. And we did that actually, because we went on TV and we were like, they're not letting the Iranians have freedom. We have to go to war. So once again, we played into Mossad's hand. So those protests were incited by Mossad. On the 25th of March, the crows circled Tel Aviv. When the crows circle anywhere, it's a biblical sign that death is to come and that God has removed his protection. So the crows circled Tel Aviv on the 25th. And you guys should look up some photos. It's like hundreds or maybe even 1,000 crows flying in a circle and landing in Tel Aviv. It's like ominous shit. Like I'm not really a superstitious guy. I would leave. If crows were in I'm gone. The crows have circled Tel Aviv on the 25th. We've already discussed how they're charging $2 million per tanker that's going through the straits, and Iran is charging $120 per barrel. Oil was $65 before this war started. Now they're charging $120. Trump goes on TV and says that Iran gave us a gift of 10 ships. My father, who's like, I can't believe it. He calls me. He's my father, so I'm not going to say rude things. But my dad calls me, and he says, Nick, we're winning the war. Iran has gifted us 10 oil tankers. I said, Dad, that doesn't sound right. So, of course, I'm doing research for the podcast. Guys, we weren't gifted shit. We were not gifted shit. These 10 ships were traded in yuan, each paid $2 million a tanker, and they were all Pakistani or Asian ships. These were countries that cut bilateral deals with Iran. This was not a gift to the United States. But Trump went on TV and made it sound like we were gifted free oil. That is not the case at all. Do not believe anyone who is telling you this. Absurd. Just absolutely absurd. Iran gives us their ceasefire demands. So these are their demands for peace. Here we go, guys. Get ready. Each one is going to hurt more than the last. Condition number 1, no U.S. bases in any GCC country. Already, there's no way we would ever agree to this. Next, end Israeli attacks in Lebanon. Whoa. Next, Israel withdraws from Gaza. Whoa. Yeah, I mean, round of applause. I know, it's so hard to root against Iran. Yeah. And that's why I'm trying to say Israel is our enemy in this war, not Iran. Lift all sanctions against Iran. Okay. Nice. The United States will pay war damage reparations to Iran. No number was listed in their demands, but it's a demand, but no number was listed. And lastly, no restrictions on Iran's missile program, which apparently is the whole fucking reason we did this war in the first place. Unbelievable. On the 26th, this is an insane story. I like this one. On the 26th, 28 senior American engineers working for Lockheed Martin, 28 senior American engineers based in Israel and the Middle East were contacted via their cell phones by Iran's hacker group, Handala. Imagine you get a text from Iranian spies. All 28 work for Lockheed Martin, and they were told that they have 48 hours to go home or they will be targeted. insane. They've got tech, bro. Iran's got tech. We were not prepared for this war. We were not prepared. According to Handala, they have broadcast, and this has been confirmed by foreign news, they broadcast the names and faces of all 28 engineers on Iranian TV. Names and faces and passports. The hackers had photos of their passports, access to their personal email, everything. Unbelievable. They also gave their place of residence and what base they live at. They were given 48 hours to leave. These are the engineers that work on the F-35, the F-22, and the THAAD missile defense systems. These are our best weapons. 28 senior guys, gone, taken off the board. Lockheed sent them home. At the same time, Handala also revealed that they have complete access to Kash Patel's entire personal email. The head of the FBI. They then said, if this is the head of the FBI, imagine what we could do to other people. They released 300 of his personal emails and photos of him, including his porn account. That's just to embarrass him, obviously. But guys, they have access to all of his email, and of the 300 emails they released, many of them were security emails, which is what Trump was ragging on Hillary for doing. So guys, we're compromised. They have our intelligence via Kash Patel. Whatever Kash Patel had on his email, Iran now knows. We're totally cooked. Totally cooked. The IDF chief of staff of the Israeli Defense Forces, the military of Israel, comes out and says, quote, the IDF is on the verge of collapse after 900 days of continuous war. Unbelievable. The own chief of staff of the IDF. The IDF is on the verge of collapse. That's a direct quote. After 900 days of war. I know. At this point, it's becoming the Great News Podcast. At this point. Now, on the 27th, Israel destroyed all 3 of Iran's steel plants, their largest steel plants. That is civilian infrastructure. Iran has said that they will respond in kind, but they haven't done so yet. I mean, we're getting really close to present day. So this is an evolving situation, guys. $250 million of weapons that the European Union purchased to then gift to Ukraine is now being withheld by Trump. Force majeure. Trump is claiming force majeure and saying that we need those weapons for Iran. So we are now prioritizing our illegal offensive war of choice in Iran and putting the safety of Ukraine at risk. My goodness. Then, as of yesterday, all helium shipments coming from Qatar have been renounced via force majeure. Here, force majeure, force majeure. Everyone's doing it. It usually never happens. Now everyone's doing it. We're doing it. The Qataris are doing it. 30% of the world's entire helium supply comes from just Qatar. So as of yesterday, 30% of the world's helium gone. Guys, the ramifications of this, we can't even truly begin to understand and fathom. This is going to be so detrimental to the world economy, to economic growth. People will starve and people will die because of this. In developing countries, they rely on these resources to literally feed themselves. Like, people are going to die as a result of this war. Israel has now rushed a law through the Knesset, which will allow them to mass execute all 11,000 Palestinian prisoners currently being held in prison by the IDF. The reason for this is they need the soldiers to serve on the battlefield, and they can't use them to watch over the prisoners. Mass execution of 11,000 prisoners. Over 500 of these prisoners are children, and the vast majority of these prisoners have been never charged with a crime and are being held against their will. I mean, even the loosest definition of POW, prisoner of war, wouldn't apply to most of these prisoners. Oh my goodness. Then, as of April 1st, So starting April 1st, Russia is going to be banning exports of gas. This just came out. We don't really have too many details, but if that actually comes to fruition, very, very bad. And then Marco Rubio goes on TV and says, quote, regime change in Cuba is necessary. Direct quote on TV from Marco Rubio. Regime change in Cuba is necessary. As of yesterday, 13 military bases, U.S. military bases, are either destroyed or deemed too close to enemy territory to occupy. 13 bases. That's billions and billions, that's hundreds of billions of dollars of lost territory. Iran attacked the Prince Sultan Air Force Base in Saudi Arabia, the largest Air Force base in Saudi Arabia and in the entire Middle East. And according to intelligence from leaked American intelligence, this was leaked American intelligence, but also according to Iran, they have destroyed 3, wait, is that number right? Yes, well, okay, 3, yes, 3. E-3 AWACS, AWAC. These are the planes that we use to give radar in the sky. The entire Air Force only has 20 of them, and 3 were destroyed in one attack on the Prince Sultan Air Force Base. Why were they destroyed? Negligence on our part. You see, the only Air Force base in the Middle East that can refuel and handle these planes is the Prince Sultan Air Force Base in Saudi Arabia. We knew that that base was within the range of Iran, but rather than flying those planes out to Europe and refueling and doing maintenance on them in Europe, we got lazy, we grounded them in Iran, and then Iran destroyed all 3 of them. That's 3 out of 20. Major, major loss to the U.S. Air Force. Major loss. Unbelievable. They also destroyed, this was just in yesterday's attack. They've already destroyed more in the past, but in yesterday's attack, 5 KC-135 aerial refueling planes as well. Trump then admits that the USS Ford, which is our largest and most powerful aircraft carrier, was hit from, quote, 17 different angles, and that we, quote, ran for our lives. That's a direct quote from the president. You see, they were saying that the Ford needed to be maintenance because a fire started in the laundry room. This is a real story. You could look this up. For 2.5 weeks, they were telling us that the Gerald R. Ford USS aircraft carrier had to go to Europe for repairs because a fire was started in the laundry room. Well, Trump admitted yesterday that no, it's actually because we got hit by, quote, 17 different angles and had to run for our lives. Guys, we are getting draxed in this war. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise that we are winning this war. We are losing this war. They were claiming fires in the laundry room, clogged toilets, all sorts of bullshit. And there were sewage leaks on the aircraft carrier, so entire dormitory units were flooded with septic and sewage. So sailors, Navy members were sleeping on the floors of the aircraft carrier. Unbelievable. So our main aircraft carrier is out of commission, and we've lost a ton of aircraft as well. So let's just do a quick countdown here. Currently, the United States is in direct wars with Iran, Venezuela, Yemen, Somalia, Syria, Iraq, Nigeria, and Ecuador. Okay, pretty crazy. And let's add Cuba, because that's bound to happen. I'm sure, I hate to say it, but I have a pretty bad feeling that by the time I come to you guys with another episode of the No Good News Podcast in May, we will be at war with Cuba. Genuinely. I hope that's not the case, but Rubio just said that regime change in Cuba is necessary. So I don't think there's any other way to interpret that message. We are also indirectly at war with Russia and Ukraine, China with this oil situation, because China and Russia are providing intelligence to Iran as well. So, that kind of counts. And the Ecuador situation is complicated because, technically the government of Ecuador is inviting us in, but if you really look into it, we kind of forced ourselves in, and they're like, they don't want to be killed and kidnapped like Maduro, so they're kind of just agreeing to let us stay there. So it's kind of a dubious situation with Ecuador. It is official that from May 1st to May 20th, all gas in the United States will be diluted from 10 to 15% ethanol to ration oil and reduce fuel costs. Also keep in mind that it takes 8 to 16 weeks from oil that is pumped to reach the gas pump. Now, this war has only been going on for 4 weeks. So the oil that we are buying today at the gas station was drilled before this war started. That is why all these countries around the world are running out of oil. Right now, gas is approximately $3.80 in North Carolina. Guys, we could be looking at 1970s level gas shortages and oil shocks. If this war doesn't end very soon, like within the next 2 or 3 weeks, we could be looking at a Jimmy Carter oil shock situation where it's like you can only drive on Mondays and Wednesdays. Like insane shit. Work from home mandates. You can only buy gas if you're on this day if your license plate ends in an even number. Like this is stuff that we did in the 70s that a lot of people forget about. And it is already a widely known fact that this disruption, this oil shock, is the largest disruption to global markets in world history. So by that logic, I guess we can expect for these things to happen. I don't know, like I might get trapped in like New Jersey. I literally don't know. Or trapped here. Like I'm not even sure what's going to happen. So yeah, I mean, if fill up on gas, like if you think that gas is going to stay constant, no, like constantly be filling up your tank with gas. Because once May comes, it's going to be diluted. And I'm expecting prices to just keep going up. And that will happen if this war continues. And then this morning, I was very, very sad to learn that the United States has officially announced plans for a 2-month ground invasion of Iran. That is as of this morning, as of the 29th of March. We have stationed over 15,000 Marines. It's a combination of Marines and the 82nd Airborne. But we have over 15,000 soldiers currently ready to be sent into Iran. And as of this morning, the United States has announced plans for a 2-month ground invasion. And I keep saying it that way because that is the direct announcement from the Pentagon. And obviously we're recording this today. So maybe they retract that statement or nothing happens with it. Or maybe, we're recording this on a Saturday. It's possible that by Wednesday, we have sent boots on the ground into Iran, which is absolutely tragic. This is a war of choice that we should have nothing to do with. And I cannot believe that our leaders are choosing to further escalate rather than retreat. They think that retreat would be a sign of weakness, and it is. But we can't win this war. And our generals knew it from the start. So if you're going to start a war that you can't win, that doesn't mean that you should continue the war and lose worse. You should pull out. We've already lost a lot of Americans in this war. The government is definitely underreported. According to the government, we've only lost 15 soldiers. According to the government. There's no way that's true. No way. We've definitely, I'm going to ballpark it and say, well, according to Iran, we've lost 1,000. I don't think that's true. I think we've lost less than that. But I think 150, 200, there's no way it's 15. There's no way it's 15. Impossible. But they have announced plans for a 2-month ground invasion. Unbelievable. So, I know this is a very long episode, but I had to give you guys the updates. And I wanted to give you guys a view into this conflict from foreign news sources so we can all walk around and be better informed. As I've mentioned before, our next episode is slated for May. My personal life is about to get pretty crazy here. For the last 2 weeks, all I've done is work, study for my actuary test, and research for this podcast. My exam is coming up in April, so I'm going to have to take a break from recording and researching for a while. So with that, I will say goodbye, Goyim, and I will see you in the Zagros Mountains.